To understand the feeding relationships in an ecosystem, what we do is we break it down into food chains and food webs. A food chain is a simple representation of, in a particular in a particular ecosystem, what is eating what. And it always starts at the primary producer, or the thing that's photosynthesizing and producing sugars, and then the energy that is available in its biomass or its body, its leaves, its twigs, or whatever's been eaten. That energy is going to be transferred into whatever other living things are going to be eating it. So the grass in this example is being eaten by the cricket's being eaten by the chicken's being eaten by the cat's being eaten by the hawk. And the arrow in between shows where the flow of energy is going to. So it's a form of chemical energy, so the energy that's in food is chemical energy. And when another living thing eats another living thing, the chemical energy is transferred to the creature that eats the other one. A more complex representation of the feeding relationships within an ecosystem is shown in a food web. In a food web, you've got all the different living things that are in that particular ecosystem, and you show all the feeding relationships between them. So it can look a bit messy and complicated, with lots of different living things and lots of different arrows going everywhere. But there's an overall pattern in how this is organised. The pattern is, along the bottom, you get all the producers. So the producers are living things that can produce their own food. So they're generally plants and algae and photosynthetic bacteria, and they all have the ability to photosynthesize and capture, to use sunlight to fuse carbon dioxide and water together to create sugar. So all the producers are along the bottom, and if this is a pasture food web, you generally get grasses, herbs, and maybe shrubs within that particular ecosystem. And then the producers are feeding the whole food chain, so the energy that they're able to create through photosynthesis and make into sugars and fats and proteins, though that energy, that food, then provides the sustenance for all the consumers. So the consumers are things that need to eat other things to get the energy that they need. They can't produce their own food like producers can. So there's a few different categories of consumers. There's the primary consumers, which are eating the producers. So another word for that is the herbivores. So in this particular example, we've got weevils, crickets, and sheep as the primary consumers or herbivores. And then the secondary consumers are things that eat either the herbivores or the plants. So they can be, they're generally omnivores or small predators. And then right at the top of the food web is the tertiary consumers, and they're the big carnivores within the system. So if you think of like an African plain, for example, they're the lions and tigers and big carnivores that are right at the top of the food chain. So using that structure, you can start to organise where the particular individuals fit within the food web. So you get all the producers along the bottom, so the grasses, herbs and shrubs. You've got all the primary consumers above them, so all the herbivores, weevils, crickets and sheep in this case. And then the secondary consumers, or the omnivores or small predators, we've got predatory beetles and stoats, and they're generally eating just the herbivores in this case. And then right at the top of this food web, we've got a stray dog which is eating the stoats and potentially the sheep as well. So this is a representation of a New Zealand pasture type ecosystem, showing the feeding relationships between all of the living things within that ecosystem. An energy pyramid is a way of showing the energy flow through the ecosystem, and its representation of how much energy is actually available to the next trophic level within the food chain. A trophic level is a level of consumption. So the first trophic level is the producers, the second trophic level is the primary consumers, then the secondary consumers, and then the tertiary consumers. So each one of these is a different trophic level. And it's often represented by primary, secondary and tertiary as well. So when you look at the flow of energy, It's the producers that are capturing the energy from within the molecules, so from within the carbon dioxide and the water, there's energy trapped in those molecules, and then they use the energy of sunlight to fuse those molecules together and make sugar through photosynthesis. So all of the energy that they're able to create in sugars through photosynthesis then provides a food source for the rest of the food web. So each level up the food pyramid, only 10% of the energy from the level below it is available to the next level up. That's because 90% is always lost as heat to fuel all the metabolic processes and to keep those organisms warm. They lose a lot of energy as heat. So if that means that, you know, maybe 100,000 kilojoules of energy is made available in sugars by the producers, only 10% of that is available to the next level up. So only 10,000 kilojoules is available for food for the primary consumers or the herbivores, and 900,000 kilojoules is lost as heat. And the same thing on the next level up. So if there's 10,000 kilojoules of energy in the body tissues of these herbivores, the things that are eating them can only obtain 1,000 kilojoules of energy from that, and 9,000 kilojoules has been lost as heat. And then the same on the next level up. So you've got only 100 kilojoules now of energy of food to provide the tertiary consumers or the big carnivores. And what that means is that in any ecosystem, you can have, well, in any ecosystem you've got to have a lot more of the producers than you can the animals that are eating the producers, because so much of the energy is being lost as heat each time. So for example, if this was like an African savanna system, you'd have lots of trees and you'd have lots of shrubs and grasses and herbs. You'd have quite a lot of herbivores in that system because they can access more of the energy that's available in that ecosystem. You'd have a lot smaller number of omnivores or smaller predators within that ecosystem because they can only get a small amount of the energy that's within the herbivores. And then the big tertiary consumers, the big carnivores that are in that system, can only access a very small amount of the original energy that was produced by the producers. So that ecosystem can support only a small number of them. The other application of this is the energy available for supporting a particular diet. So if humans are going to eat whatever they want within an ecosystem, there's a lot more energy available in the plants within that ecosystem than there are within the animals within the ecosystem. So if we are concerned with a growing population of trying to get as much energy of food out of a particular ecosystem, we can obtain a lot more energy from eating plants than we can from eating herbivores or small omnivores like pigs or big predators from that ecosystem, because it's only the energy that's being produced by the producers that is available to support the rest of the food web.